Donald Trump has taken the unprecedented decision to suspend all military aid to Ukraine following the fiery row with President Zelenskyy at the White House. The US president is putting pressure on Ukraine to sign a mineral deal and make peace with Russia. But European allies are rallying around to form their own plan. Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, the jaw-dropping exchange between two world leaders left the rest of the world stunned, and it's led to a pause in US aid to Ukraine. It's a move that will not just impact Kyiv, but European allies faced with supporting Ukraine all alone. How will Europe step up, and can relations between the United States and Ukraine ever be restored?
What was supposed to be a step towards peace ended with two allies further divided and descended into a chaotic argument.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting?
Zelenskyy hurriedly rushed out of the White House and into the arms of European leaders 2 days later at a London summit on a Ukraine peace plan. The fiery exchange shocked the US's European allies, who now face a delicate balancing act of keeping the US on side and supporting Ukraine.
The UK is prepared to back this, with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
The US has been the backstop of European military security since World War II. And now, with Trump's decision to pause military aid, it's increased pressure on Europe to go it alone.
What do you need to see from President Zelenskyy to restart these negotiations?
Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border. This country really was like the fence on the border.
Europe may need to find peace in Ukraine without the US. But is it possible?
Well, let's meet our guests. Joining me here in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is Greg Swenson. He's the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. And Russell Foster, senior lecturer in British and international politics. That's at King's College London. In Paris, we have Nabila Ramdani. She's a French journalist and the author of Fixing France: How to Repair a Broken Republic. And joining us from New York in the United States, Andrij Dobriansky, Director of Communications and Media, that's at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Greg, I'll come to you first. Just briefly, give me your impression of what happened at the White House on Friday night. It will go down in history, but for a lot of people, certainly in Europe, that was an ambush.
Yeah, I don't think it was an ambush, and that's because I looked at the entire 50 minutes instead of just the clips of the end, and it's really important to do that. So the first 40 minutes were very diplomatic. Everybody was polite. I thought that Zelenskyy might have poked President Trump a few times, but he managed it well. He just kind of, kept going, and it was very complimentary of Zelenskyy. So no, it was not an ambush. And in fact, before the meeting, there was a breakfast at the Hay Adams Hotel right across the street from the White House with prominent Democrats. And Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, even put out a tweet that's almost bragging that they had convinced or encouraged President Zelenskyy to not accept the terms of the deal that had been agreed upon. It was supposed to be a signing ceremony. So no, ambush out of the question.
And tell me, Vice President Vance, his role in everything we saw as well, he was very aggressive.
Well, yeah, but only at the end when he came in a way to defend President Trump, when Zelenskyy was pushing way too hard. It was maybe well-suited for behind the scenes private meeting if there's a negotiation going on, but this was publicly negotiated in that forum, and I think that was a mistake. So no, I think J.D. Vance was just defending the president, and when things got testy, only at the end.
And Russell, the fallout from this has been seismic. What do we do now in Europe? Ukraine having no American support as of now.
Well, the first thing to bear in mind is that the Trump presidency is exceptionally unpredictable. It's frankly chaotic. So we've seen so many different noises coming out of the White House before and since the election. Trump said on Monday night that he's going to be cutting off support to Ukraine. I would not be in the slightest bit surprised that by the time this goes out, or even by the time I check my phone after this recording, that Trump has decided to reverse that. In terms of cutting off American aid to Ukraine, it could be temporary, it could be long-term. Either way, Europe has got to get its house in order. Now, this is not new. American presidents have been saying this since even before the end of the Cold War. And the Europeans, including the British, didn't want to listen. Now it's very, very clear that the Pax Americana is coming to an end, because whoever comes along after Trump is going to have a very difficult job in rebuilding America's reputation as an ally around the world. So this is a huge wake-up call to the European powers that we need to stand on our own, we need to stand with our Ukrainian allies, and we need to stand together for the next crisis that emerges somewhere in the world.
Nabila, in a strange way, has President Trump done Europe a favour here, forcing everyone to get their act together?
Well, first of all, it has to be said that I found the Trump-Zelenskyy exchange quite a mad one and a chaotic exchange. And sadly, it says so much about the world we live in. In my view, the old liberal consensus based on the grown-ups being in charge has completely disappeared. And instead, international politics is characterized by populist shouting, sloganeering, and indeed bullying. And Trump tried to portray himself as a deal-making businessman, but ultimately he's a TV showman and someone who loves to show off a mass audience. Let's be honest, he's committed a democratic coup, and he now wants to impose his will on everything, including incredibly complicated foreign policy situations. And yes, I think the impact on Europe is quite substantial in the sense that most European leaders are now a lot more hawkish. And for example, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, keeps making out that the Ukraine crisis has offered, as he put it, a once-in-a-generation chance for Europe to sort out its own security. But to me, this kind of language really is terrifying because it has a messianic feel to it, just as Iraq provided a messianic moment for Tony Blair to drag Britain even further into the cataclysmic war on terror. And Starmer has apparently turned into the ultimate hawk, saying to Zelenskyy, now we are all with you, with Ukraine, for as long as it takes, while also apparently being relaxed with all the anti-Zelenskyy rhetoric coming out of Trump and indeed Vance. So it's a very chaotic and muddled situation, and one that becomes more worrying by the day. And Macron, President Macron of France himself, he very much sees himself as a leader of Europe, if not the leader of Europe. He knows he has a much bigger international profile than the Germans since Angela Merkel stepped down. And now he's using this to try and formulate European security policy. And France and Germany are, of course, the two major powers of the EU. They were the founding fathers of the EU, which in many ways was designed to stop the two countries going to war against each other. But in this respect, I think Macron is certainly trying to seal his legacy by getting security policy right. And it's very much crucial to the Europe. But as we've seen with Macron, as always, he can be extremely two-faced at times. He pretends to be on the side, on one side, while also playing up to the other. And we saw this in the run-up to the 2022 ground invasion of Ukraine, when he was visiting Moscow to plead with Vladimir Putin not to invade, while also trying to impress Zelenskyy. And as the current crisis intensified, he has become a lot more hawkish, and he wants a far better armed Europe ready for war, effectively.
Andrij, the upshot of all of this rancour is cataclysmic for Ukraine. Many military experts are saying. How are you feeling right now?
I'm, well, along with a lot of Americans, completely stunned at what is happening. Stunned not because we weren't aware of the kind of person that President Trump is, the kind of people that he surrounds himself. Many of people in that cabinet room meeting last week having been released from prison or brought up on charges in the past. Frankly, we're witnessing a decapitation of the American government from the top down. This is not a bottom-up revolution. We're seeing scores of federal agencies, tens of thousands of federal workers relieved. We're seeing institutions like the revered IRI, NDI, other international means of soft power and education around the world completely decimated because of a lack of American funding. We're seeing people starve. People are starving around the world because of the actions of this president, and we haven't even gotten to the 100-day mark. We will surely be witnessing a lot more dramatic changes in the coming weeks. But for Ukraine, they are faced with an existential choice, and what they will turn to is multilateralism and internationalism, which has been the bedrock of the international alliance for all the talk about America. And it is unfortunate for the United States that we have lost that gift. We have lost that gift of diplomacy. We're currently without a permanent representative to the United Nations. And we saw the United States bite itself at the United Nations last week when it refused to vote for its own resolution simply because of an amendment that was offered to it. Had it voted for its own resolution, it would have received more support than Ukraine and the EU's joint resolution. But again, this is an administration that doesn't know how to work with international accords, doesn't agree to what was signed before it. We saw that in the discussion in the Oval Office, that whatever happened prior to President Trump does not recognize, and even the 25 times that Russia violated its promises to Ukraine during President Trump's first term weren't recognized by President Trump.
Greg, do you accept that President Putin now has no incentive to go to peace talks because he's empowered, he's emboldened, and his enemy, Ukraine, is weakened by what your president has done?
Yeah, I don't think they would have been weakened. If Zelenskyy had just signed the minerals agreement, as had been negotiated and settled, then that would give the United States an active partnership with Ukraine. That, I think, is better for security. So no, this is, and yes, there's still plenty of cards in Putin's hand. That's the great mystery right now. And I think Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was very clear about that over the weekend. That, we're not promising that Putin will come and say yes to whatever we propose, but we've got to try. And I think it was good that the Europeans got together on Sunday to try to make their own proposition to Putin, and to Zelenskyy. So look, this is diplomacy, and to say that there's the U.S. doesn't do diplomacy anymore. Yeah, there's a distaste for some multilateral institutions. That's what the voters voted for. Republicans and Democrats for generations have been talking about cutting back big government, cutting back on the bureaucracy. No one ever does it, but President Trump is actually acting, and he's basically acting on what the voters want, and one of the many reasons they elected him was to do this. So last week you had Macron on Monday, you had the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom on Thursday. Those are good moments of diplomatic banter and important for the future.
All undone. And Russell, you don't agree.
On Friday, yeah.
Now we're moving into US domestic politics, and I can understand that there was certainly a demand from the American electorate for a change to the system. Yeah. Yes, the US government, like every government in the world, has wastage and has bloating, but this is not a calm, rational, sensible approach to cutting out waste. This is Elon Musk's chainsaw, a flamethrower. My concern is that what we're seeing in international politics is going to get infinitely worse because the United States is being led by the political equivalent of a random number generator where we have no idea what policy is going to come next. Donald Trump is not even running the United States government. It's essentially Elon Musk. We all know that.
Greg, just come in on that then, that Musk is running everything. Is Musk running your government?
Of course not. Musk is running DOGE, which is meant to clean up the government or the federal bureaucracy.
Government efficiency.
It's actually, and it's actually just been renamed. It's an agency that had a place in an advisory role. So, yeah, is Elon Musk taking the chainsaw, like Malay in Argentina? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean he's running the government. President Trump and his team is running the government. The cabinet is in place, and you don't have just radicals in the government right now. I mean, I would argue, for example, Marco Rubio is a traditional conservative Republican. I think you've got Scott Bessent as Secretary of Treasury, considered very mainstream. So, look, there's going to be disruption. That's what people want. That's what the voters voted for. Is it going to be pleasant all the time? Of course not.
Let's bring in Nabila. Nabila, I want to talk about Keir Starmer. So we're seeing him step up. He's had probably a shaky 6 or 7 months domestically as UK Prime Minister. And yet he seems to be Europe's best hope right now, doesn't he?
Well, I think like many European leaders, Keir Starmer is saying that the security of Europe depends on every nation getting it right over Ukraine. But that was never the case in the past. If it had been, Western European countries would have all gone to war on behalf of Iron Curtain countries after World War II. Instead, there was a Cold War aimed at containing Russia and avoiding more bloodshed. But the tone is very different now, with European leaders sounding like they would like a war against Russia over Ukraine. And the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, said at the European Leaders Conference on Sunday, and I quote her word, that she said that we urgently have to rearm Europe. So she effectively wants a massive increase in arms, and as history has taught us, arms races inevitably build up a dynamic of their own and push countries towards war. Trump, for example, President Trump said that he would like to see the budget, the military budget for European countries be raised to 5% of GDP. And President Macron of France, perhaps most important statement at the conference of European leaders on Sunday, he said he called on Europeans to dramatically increase their yearly defense spending to between 3 and 3.5% of GDP. But 3.5% is still a very large figure, even though President Trump would like to see it raised to 5%. Macron is the first French leader this century to call for an increase, and France currently spends just 2.1% of GDP on its military annually, which is only just above NATO's 2% target. But remember that for the past 3 years, the Russians have been spending 10% of their GDP on defense.
Andrij, to you, just give us your impression of how long Ukraine can survive now without American assistance.
Ukraine has been surviving without American or Western existence for centuries. It's up to the Ukrainian people to continue their existence, and that's always going to have to be the case. With respect, we did not avoid bloodshed during the Cold War. We may have minimized it for the West to become fat and rich, but my people were certainly rounded up and beaten on a regular basis, beaten to death. And that's what continues to happen to this day with the culling of Ukrainians in occupied territories as they're rounded up into filtration camps, as they are tasered over and over again, as they stand naked in showers. This is a complete betrayal of what the world promised in Nuremberg, that we would never let happen again. But apparently, with a change of administration in the United States, it's very easy to forget the lessons of the past. It's also very easy to forget that Europe has been at war for millennia, and yet the policies that the West put in place to disarm Europe, to make sure that we are never brought into this place ever again, are seemingly being tossed off, that we need to make sure that Europe's armies are strong again, without any care that for at least 2 millennia, the internecine fighting in Europe has been the cause of great bloodshed around the world. So there's a lot of history that seems to be forgotten in this, and I hope that calmer heads prevail. And the way that happens is with international dialogue, the kind that we saw in London and the kind that we will see in upcoming summits throughout the year.
Andrij, to you again. How do Americans square relentless support of Israel, billions and billions of dollars every single year, And yet President Trump has a disagreement with President Zelenskyy in the space of 10, 15 minutes on a Friday night, and the taps get turned off immediately. How do people feel seeing that kind of dichotomy?
Well, the economies are diverse. Marco Rubio was brought up, a man who did not say a word in that meeting in the Oval Office, and then for some reason felt the need to issue a statement that he is so proud of his president for defending the United States. I don't know how the United States needed defending in any way when talking to an ally. And worst which, you brought up Israel. There's plenty of people within the administration, including Marco Rubio, who have constantly berated the United States government for working with or trying to reach diplomatic accords with rogue states such as Iran. And here we have the ultimate rogue state, the one that has committed crimes on British territory, crimes on European territory, crimes against almost every NATO ally on a regular basis, including crimes against the humanity against its own people. And for some reason, the people who are so quick to condemn the United States for talking to Iran, condemn it from talking to China and others, seem to forget that when talking to somebody who is actively involved in the largest war in Europe since World War II.
Greg, there seems to be a school of thought amongst some American commentators that a little apology from Zelenskyy and a big thank you for all the American support, sign the minerals deal and the weapons will come again.
Yeah, I think it's more the minerals deal. The apology, yeah, it would be helpful. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think President Zelenskyy in the past has been very thankful. He got into a big brawl with Joe Biden when Joe Biden told him that he was being, obnoxious and arrogant and wasn't thankful enough. And he turned around and, expressed his thanks in many different forums. So, it would be nice. I don't know that it's necessary. It was like the whole argument with wearing a suit. Yeah, it would have been nice.
Is that a problem for you?
No, it's not a problem. It would have been a nice gesture if he did it. It's maybe a missed opportunity, but I don't think that's a big deal. I think what's most important, and President Trump was joking around about it in the beginning, so it's obviously not a big issue. And in fact, again, the president joked about it. But I think it's important to sign the minerals deal because it was agreed upon. And he agreed upon it initially with Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, a week earlier, and then sort of backed away from it. Then they negotiated again. Maybe some terms were changed. But I think that would be that's the most critical thing right now is the minerals deal.
The minerals deal.
Yeah.
Russell, looking forward, do you think it's now a case of Europe looking after itself, going ahead all by itself and all us European countries working together, or will America eventually come back into the picture?
America is not out of the picture. So remember that Donald Trump is not emperor and he's not going to live forever. I have serious doubts as to whether there will be a presidential election in 2028, but there's going to be an American society going into the future. And at some point, they are going to come back into the Western fold. To answer the first question, yes, we are seeing the greatest coming together of Europeans that we've seen since the end of the Second World War, because Russia is right there, it's right next door, and it's a direct threat. We don't have a big, beautiful ocean between us. But we also have to remember that the people we're talking about, Ukraine, Russia, America, Europe, we're not the only people in the world. There are other countries which are now going to be sought after by both sides for alliances. We want to be keeping a very close eye on what happens on relations between the West, Russia and India, South Korea, Japan. Europe needs to rearm very quickly. It's going to take a few years to get our factories up and running. So who are we going to buy the weapons from, first of all? We're going to see increasing communication between Brussels, Cairo, New Delhi, perhaps even Seoul and Tokyo. So this is not a return to the Cold War. It's not a return to the 1930s. This is a return to the 19th century of a multipolar world between multiple different factions all trying to outfox one another. This is not something to look forward to.
Andrij, so the United States has turned off the taps of support, but one thing's sure, China and North Korea will not stop supporting Russia.
Without any repercussions, I might add. I also would echo the words coming out of Australia that looks at the rest of the ASEAN countries and understands that they do not see a reliable partner in the United States for the future, and that the longer that President Putin is able to destabilize the Western alliance, the more free rein that China will have in spreading its influence further and further out into the Atlantic Ocean and to the south. And for that, we do need a stronger Western military arms base. It's something that can happen. Europe is enormously wealthy, as is the United States. Both have been using only a mere fraction of the resources that they have to assist Ukraine and to stop Russia, something that could have been done very early on in 2022 and 2023. We do know how both Europe and the United States were cautioning Ukraine against what they could have done to Russian forces when they were on the retreat. And I would just like to underscore the Marco Rubio was sent to ask President Zelenskyy to leave, thereby canceling the deal. President Zelenskyy did not walk away from the deal. He was asked to leave from the White House, the first time that's ever happened, especially for a wartime ally, but first time that's ever happened for the country of Ukraine to be kicked out of the White House. It is not Ukraine's choice not to sign that deal, and any accusation other than the fact belies the truth, which was that President Trump did not have the fortitude to return to President Zelenskyy and ask him to either sign the deal or leave. He left it to one of his subordinates.
Greg, fascinating stuff. We will no doubt talk again very soon. And to Russell, Nabila and Andrij, fascinating discussion. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable, TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.